The FBI called him the most dangerous man in America. Not a foreign spy, not a terrorist, not a criminal, a preacher. This is not a theory. This is a document written by the Federal Bureau of Investigation about Martin Luther King Jr. It has a name, COINTELPRO. And the King file is not even the darkest part of what this program did. There is a document with a floor plan in it, a bedroom marked with an X. The man who slept in that bed did not wake up. We will get to that. But first, you need to understand what this program was, because if you do not understand the scale of it, you will not understand how far it was allowed to go. Here is where it starts. In 1956, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover authorized a new kind of operation, not investigation, not surveillance for evidence, something else, counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO. The stated purpose was simple: stop the spread of communism inside the United States. But by the late 1950s, the target list had already grown far beyond that. Civil rights organizations, anti-war groups, feminist organizations, the Ku Klux Klan, socialist parties, black nationalist movements. By 1967, Hoover sent a memo to 22 FBI field offices. It laid out the mission in his own words. The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, or otherwise neutralize black activist leaders and organizations. Neutralize, not arrest, not prosecute. Neutralize, that word is doing a lot of work. And the documents show exactly what it meant in practice. Case 1. Martin Luther King Jr. The FBI began tapping King's phone in 1963. The official justification was concern about communist infiltration inside the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the civil rights organization King helped found. No evidence of that infiltration was ever found. The wiretaps continued anyway. After King delivered his most famous speech during the March on Washington in 1963, an FBI memo described him as, in the Bureau's own words, the most dangerous and effective Negro leader in the country. The memo called for neutralizing him. The surveillance escalated. Microphones were placed in King's hotel rooms. His conversations were recorded for years. In October 1964, King was announced as the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. 2 days later, an FBI audio technician began preparing a package. On November 21, 1964, that package arrived at King's home. Inside was a letter, anonymous, and a tape containing recordings from the hotel room microphones. The letter told King in these words, "There's only one way out for you." King's wife Coretta later said, what was on the tape amounted to nothing coherent, unusable, meaningless noise dressed up as scandal. But the letter was not really about the tape. It was about King understanding what it meant. He read it as a demand that he end his own life. He kept working. He did not go public with what had happened. The full letter was not discovered until 2014, when a historian found it sitting in Hoover's confidential files at the National Archives. 9 years after Hoover's death, 50 years after it was sent. Case 2, the Black Panther Party. By 1968, Hoover had publicly called the Black Panther Party the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. 233 documented COINTELPRO operations were run against the Panthers alone, more than against any other single group in the program's history. The FBI's tactics went beyond wiretaps. Field agents produced forged letters between black nationalist organizations designed to start conflicts that did not previously exist. One internal memo described a plan to plant a cartoon in a rival organization's newspaper, specifically to provoke internal distrust. This tactic had a name inside the Bureau: snitch jacketing. An informant would falsely accuse a real member of being an informant. Trust collapsed from the inside. Nobody could be certain who to believe because the FBI had made sure that doubt, once planted, could not be removed. This is not speculation. This is written in the FBI's own internal memos, later released through FOIA requests and congressional investigation. Now, here's where it gets darker. This next part is not in the files, but here's what we know led up to it. One of the men the FBI viewed as the most dangerous kind of leader was Fred Hampton, chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. He was 21 years old. Hampton was not organizing violence. He had brokered a truce between rival street gangs in Chicago. He ran a free breakfast program for children in his neighborhood. He was, by every account, a gifted organizer with the ability to unite people across racial lines. That made him more dangerous to the Bureau, not less. Hoover's own words from an internal memo described the fear driving the entire program, preventing the rise of what Hoover called a Black Messiah. Case 3, December 4th, 1969. An FBI informant named William O'Neill had infiltrated the Chicago Black Panther Party 3 years earlier on the Bureau's direct instruction. By 1969, he had worked his way up to Chief of Security. He was Fred Hampton's personal bodyguard. On the night of December 3rd, 1969, O'Neill served Hampton dinner. He put a sedative in Hampton's drink. O'Neill had already given his FBI handler a detailed floor plan of the apartment, every room, every piece of furniture, the exact location of the bed where Hampton slept. That floor plan was passed to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. At 4:45 in the morning on December 4th, 14 Chicago police officers entered the apartment. Hampton, sedated, never woke up. Police fired between 82 and 99 shots. A later independent forensic analysis confirmed nearly all of them came from police weapons. Only one shot came from inside the apartment, fired reflexively by Panther Mark Clark as he was already falling, fatally wounded. Hampton's fiancée, Deborah Johnson, was in the bed beside him. She was 8 months pregnant. She was pulled from the room. She heard an officer ask if Hampton was still alive. Then 2 more shots. Then a voice said, "He is good and dead now." Fred Hampton was pronounced dead at the scene. Mark Clark was killed alongside him. Following the raid, the FBI paid William O'Neill a $300 bonus. The internal memo authorizing that payment described his information as being of tremendous value. This is not disputed history. It took 13 years of federal litigation to establish it, but it was established. In 1976, the city of Chicago and federal government paid $1,850,000 to the families of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in a civil settlement. No FBI agent, no Chicago police officer, no prosecutor was ever criminally charged for what happened on West Monroe Street. Here is how the entire program came to light. COINTELPRO was never exposed by a whistleblower inside the Bureau. It was exposed by a burglary. On March 8, 1971, a group calling themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI broke into a small FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania. They used the cover of a major boxing match, Muhammad Ali against Joe Frazier, knowing the country's attention would be elsewhere that night. They removed more than 1,000 documents. They mailed copies to newspapers across the country. The documents exposed COINTELPRO's existence, scope, and language for the first time. Words like neutralize, terms like snitch jacketing, the full geography of who the Bureau had been targeting for 15 years. The burglars were never caught. The statute of limitations expired in 1976. In 2014, several of them came forward publicly for the first time, revealing their identities after more than 4 decades of silence. Without that break-in, the American public may never have learned what COINTELPRO was. By April 1976, the Senate's Church Committee released its final report on the program. It confirmed what the media documents had suggested. COINTELPRO had run from 1956 until 1971. It had targeted the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Nation of Islam, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Ku Klux Klan, and the entire New Left political movement. The committee's report contained a chapter with a title that left nothing to interpretation: The FBI's Covert Action Plan to Destroy the Black Panther Party. J. Edgar Hoover never answered for any of it under oath. He died in office on May 2, 1972, 8 months after COINTELPRO was formally disbanded, and 1 year before the Senate investigation even began. He received a state funeral. President Nixon ordered the flags across the country flown at half-mast. This next part is not in the files. But here is what we know. In 2020, historian Aaron Leonard obtained several hundred additional pages of FBI records through a Freedom of Information Act request, nearly 51 years after the Hampton raid. Those documents revealed that senior FBI officials in Washington, not just the Chicago field office, had played a direct role in planning the raid and in the cover-up that followed. We are not saying Hoover personally ordered every detail. We are saying that as of 2020, documents kept confirming that the authorization for what happened on West Monroe Street went higher than anyone had been able to prove in court. Some of those documents remain redacted today. COINTELPRO ended officially in 1971. But the questions it raised did not end with it. The program operated for 15 years with no meaningful oversight, approved and expanded by the head of the FBI himself, targeting American citizens for the crime of organizing, speaking, and believing something the government found inconvenient. It took a burglary to expose it. It took 13 years of litigation to prove what happened in one bedroom in Chicago. And Hoover, the man who authorized all of it, never spent a single day answering for what his own documents show he knew. Up next, on the Realize Files, we explore MKUltra subprojects, exposing real lies with real eyes.